I think it'd be better if I read just because this story takes place in 2007, and so it's been okay. So it's been like 12 years from now, and what I wrote there just crumbles. But every time that I think about writing something about this, it gets just longer and longer and longer, and it seems like it doesn't have an end. So at times you have to put a full stop, and I guess this is where I put mine. So, okay. I was 7 when I woke up in the middle of the night. It was not the first time, but it is the time that I remember most clearly. There was an eerie silence in the house, and the air was charged with some kind of energy that it's impossible to describe. I knew something was wrong the moment my eyes opened in the darkness, and then I spotted a figure at the foot of my bed. It was one of my cousins, which already made the situation stranger than usual, which of course, the usual is waking up to drink or go to the bathroom. I lie if I say that I remember exactly the first words that she told me, but I'm sure that they were reassurance. Everything is going to be alright, or some version of it. And of course it was. Why wouldn't it be? A 7-year-old brain cannot conjure a good reason why things are not going to be okay. At this point, it might be better to say that my life was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. I lived in a normal house, with a normal family, normal parents, and nothing out of the ordinary ever happened to us. That night changed everything though. She said that my brother got into an accident with his scooter and they rushed him to the hospital, but it was nothing to worry about, nothing out of the ordinary. Plus, my mom and dad were there with him, and having my mom and dad there with him meant that everything was going to be fine because they were adults and they knew things, they've been through life, so they just knew that everything was going to be fine. But don't worry, flash forward to a couple of days and he'd be actually dead. I didn't know that yet though. In front of me there was just the present and only that, and in the present everything was okay. In the brain of a 7-year-old, and especially if you were me, having mom and dad there meant that things were just going to be fine. So I lay back and I fully relaxed. But there was something that night, something that was not right. Something that I will never forget. It was that something in the air. I couldn't go back to sleep. The disruption was already motion. There was a crack that was starting to settle inside me and it won't be silenced. I played some random games at the PlayStation under my cousin's vigilant gaze. Then I must have fallen asleep and the morning after my parents must have returned home. But I don't remember any of it. I only have a flash forward of a couple of days later, going with my other cousin, this one was my age, to sleep to my grandparents' country house. It was the beginning of summer, June, it was a ritual thing that we would do. Again, there was nothing out of the ordinary, except that there was something out of the ordinary. That night, with my cousin, we prayed. We were never particularly religious children. We didn't have particularly religious family, but that night, we prayed nonetheless. We didn't think it was silly. We thought, this is what we need to get him home. The following day, I remember it as a long scream. I did not imagine it. When my granddad and my uncle brought the news, my grandma actually screamed. She fell down to her knees and screamed. And I did not understand what was happening until someone actually yelled into my face. It was just so far away from my imagination. It's been 12 years now. I've had my fair time to process, and you come to terms with it. But here's the tricky thing about grief. It never fully goes away. Not completely. It always has its triggers, and periodically I might have a good crying session about it, which I think is healthy. What happened seemed to be followed by a big invisible why, screamed into the void. And I mean, what else could we do about it? He was not sick, he just had an accident, but not a fatal one. So the big invisible why just haunted all of us around. The event was the first out of the ordinary thing that ever happened to me. That summer is just a big blur in my head. I remember bits and pieces, but never a fully constructed memory. I cannot truly tell you what I've learned from grief because everyone experiences it in a different way. Grief was not only made of things that I've lost though, it was also made of truths that I gained. It may not seem a lot in the beginning, but they started to be a part of me. And they started to grow inside me and build and made the person that perhaps I am now. I would have made choices differently if things have not gone that way. Which doesn't mean that it's something that I love to think about it, but at times you just have to take what it comes with it. Seeing my family change was perhaps the most difficult part. It was what made me realize that a loss is less about who's gone and more about who remains. But of course, I didn't realize that straight away. The mind of a 7-year-old just want an easy way out that doesn't completely destroy the world as they know it. At first, it was tricky to go around the discussion, and it was heavy to have a conversation about death itself. My dad used to leave the table, and my mom was left then to pick up the conversation. I had so many questions, and I wanted all the answers, even if they didn't make any difference. I was convinced that knowing the details might have helped me to find that out and figure it. But the more I knew, the more I realized nothing was really going to change. It's not that we wanted to ignore it, but maybe if only we whispered, it made it less real. I was really angry at first, at him, at the world, at anyone really. I thought it was selfish. It was gone and I remained to see everything change, to pick up the pieces. There was a quiet rage spreading inside of me, and at times, quiet is violent. I don't know if my parents ever felt it, but I know it was there. Then, growing up, I realized I was also scared. Scared to forget his voice, his smell, how he used to tower over me, the way he moved around the house, and of course, some of those things I kind of did forget in my mind. But there is something beautiful that my body seems to hold. I think there might be a real psychological term for this, but I don't know. What I know is that my other senses always seem capable of making up even the faintest things. At times, I open his wardrobe back home and let my fingers touch the soft fabric of his shirts and sweaters. I hold them up to my nose and I can still smell his scent. And perhaps all of these are only retrospective constructions, but they work with me. They make up a safe space for him to exist in a way that it doesn't hurt. I heard something very important the other day, ironically in class, which came back to me while I was writing down this piece. And it was that only when we let go of things, only when we allow them to take their own form and fly away from the safety of our hands, they can become a story. They can inspire or not, they can be liked or not, they can have meanings to some and none to others, but they are free. They are their own story. I truly believe we are a collection of stories, and the reason why I decided to come here today and speak is because I needed to take this part of me and usher it out of my comfort zone. I needed this to become its own story. Things don't only happen to us, they happen inside us. But maybe when a story has fulfilled its own purpose, we have to let it go. Maybe we don't have to own them forever. Thank you.